On this channel, we talk a lot about the science of homes, encompassing the physics, the chemistry, and the microbiology of homes. And most of my audience is going to be interested in healthy, more high performance, more energy efficient, and all the fancy side words that we kind of like roll into that. But there is a growing number of people who have an issue called multiple chemical sensitivities. And it's also abbreviated as MCS. And I have an expert in MCS and how to approach homes that could address those needs for people here today. Corinne Segura, thank you very much for taking the time to spend with us.
Hi, yeah, thanks. This is awesome.
Corinne is a student of mine in my mastermind program, but tonight I want to be your student and I just want to know a lot more about this. We've met people who are environmentally sensitized and kind of like, can you just kind of break down if environmental sensitivity and MCS are the same thing and what basically it is?
Yeah, I think people come to me and they go, I don't know if I have like a diagnosis. I'm like, that doesn't matter. Like if you feel unwell around, high formaldehyde product or fragrance or dryer sheets, all of that is your body telling you it doesn't really appreciate these high VOCs. You don't, I'm not saying don't get a doctor, but you don't need a doctor in order to then, figure out what kind of products would be good for your house. So I work with people that are just concerned. They might be mothers. They might just be people that want to be healthier, or up to the most extreme, very, very sensitive and very reactive. And so, your reactions can be quite severe, or they can be really minor. 90% or more people say in the first minute of the conversation, I had a really bad mold exposure and now blah, 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 blah. So there's often a really big underlying exposure. Sometimes it's not that. Sometimes someone was exposed to a gas leak or something really serious. They worked for a pesticide company, and these of course can cause further down the line problems, but usually there was something really underlining it. And so that is also partially why I've gone towards more building science. I'm still primarily a material specifier, but your course and other courses teach the house is a system. I cannot just throw a material at you and here's the right flooring for your house without understanding the whole system. And that's really important because people with chemical sensitivities almost always have a mold issue as well, mold sensitivity.
Interesting, which then goes back to the moisture, which has to do with air leakage, blah, blah, blah. So the way that essentially it works, as I understand it, is you get exposed to some high level of something, and you're saying mold, the mycotoxins or whatever that the mold creates, as an example. And from that point forward, your body becomes increasingly sensitive to a whole bunch of different things. Is it kind of like everything interacts with you in a different way, or do you still enjoy the smell of pizza the same way that you did before, for example?
Yeah, so I try and gauge where someone is when they come to me, if they're in mild, moderate, severe. Of course, all these are very blurry lines, because I need to get some kind of sense, because people want me to help guess almost for their situation. Of course, I'm going to give them options and they're going to decide what's best for them. But there's also a lot of individuality. So somebody may have become particularly, it's kind of like allergies, like particularly sensitive to even something natural, like a wool carpet. A wool carpet that hasn't been processed well has a lot of that lanolin odor. It could be really strong. You could go into a room and anyone would notice, be like, wow. And so for some people, it is so individual that I cannot choose a product for someone. They should get samples and they should make sure that it's okay for them. And that way they can sort of find where they are on the spectrum, and then with those individual types of reactions.
What have you learned about the house as a system from different courses that you've taken that starts to make it murkier for you? I realize that like a lot of it probably helps in your ability to help people, but like where does it become this really mushy line where it's the same as trying to diagnose somebody? It's just like this blurry kind of like, well, I could give you this thing and I could even give you a dehumidifier, but if you don't plug them in the right way and then they aren't set up, when you're doing all this distance consulting for people all over the place, how do you think about that?
So some ways that it helps, I do need to know the climate and the indoor humidity level for many types of things like flooring. And this is good to raise awareness that most people don't know what their humidity level is. So if they're wanting a bamboo floor, I can't go ahead with a bamboo floor suggestion at all without, that's not even a floor. I mean, that's such a tricky floor that I don't really like it in general. But if someone really wants it, we would really need to know high or low humidity. I mean, I had engineered wood floors, just, it was so dry. And last winter in the Vancouver area, we were getting down easily like 15%, 11% humidity. Wow. Relative humidity inside. So some of your warranties are going to start slipping. So humidity, climate, and then building science basics, as in what kind of, moisture in the slab. Like this is a really, really common one, like moisture in the slab affecting flooring choices, just to start. That's extremely important. Or I'd say that's a really important one. And so those are things that help me. Choosing insulation, I need to know what the wall assembly is. I cannot choose an insulation without knowing the wall assembly, or the roof even more importantly, because the wall's somewhat standard in North America, but roofs can get more complicated. So those things have all helped. But then where things get more complicated, some of the things, I learned in your course was about airflow and, stack effect, and how contaminants, your course isn't specifically about contaminants, but it leads to how contaminants can move through the air because of different, stack effect, differentials in the HVAC system, temperature. And that is something where it's good to know, because I can point something out and I could refer someone, but it can create some, a problem that I can't necessarily solve in that one session.
Absolutely. And I think, so to backtrack on your personal experience, you're not just highly qualified and an expert on this, and you help people all over the place. You yourself have MCS, is that right?
Yeah, and I don't think I'd be able to do this job, because when you look online and you see this flooring has floor score certification, which is, I would say, almost meaningless, especially that one. There's a few certifications which are better, like Green Guard Gold. They'll say really vague things now about products. All of them say something about, even vinyl sheet flooring will say, have all these environmental attributes on it. And vinyl sheet flooring is one of the highest off-gassing floorings. So without having MCS, I wouldn't be able to do this job to this degree. I wouldn't be able to help people that are extremely sensitive, because I have to get all those samples. I'll have a pile of every carpet sample that I can get, and a pile of all the laminates and all the vinyl flooring, and just see like, what is the odor. Not every chemical has an odor, but most of them do. Then the ones that we know don't have an odor, that's when I can start to look up technical data, patents, health product declarations, and get into
and things like phthalates, for example, that come out of vinyl flooring, that doesn't have a smell necessarily. Just like radon is like not good for you, but you can't smell it. I mean, or can you?
I can, yes.
You can. Okay.
Yeah. So whenever they say something's odorless, it's always, and even there's a formaldehyde chart that shows, the toxicity limit for humans, and then like the workplace limit, and then there'll be like human odor threshold, and I'm like I can smell it way below that, which is helpful. But some things really are odorless, like flame retardants. I'm not sure anyone can claim that they can smell flame retardants. There's a few other things like that. Radon, I don't think anyone claims they can smell radon.
By the way, for people in our audience who are watching this right now and saying, no way she could smell whatever, I just want to point out that Charlie Weschler in the home chem experiment revealed to me that there are people in Denmark whose job is to do what Corinne is describing, taste testing, and they work for labs instead of what Corinne does is like doing it on her own independently, just like we do on our building science side. But like the human, like you can't build a computer that can taste wine and tell you about where the grapes were from and what season they were harvested and blah, blah, blah. Humans are the only sensor that can do that at this point. And so anything about the chemical side, don't even think that you can pretend that you know about what people can smell or what they can't, especially if you're a man and you think women can't smell things. Number one, women are more sensitive than men are in a lot of ways. In physical sensory, by the way, is what I'm talking about. And this whole field is very unresearched. So are you able to smell similarities between things like drywall, wood products, laminate flooring, vinyl? I mean, do you smell things in common between these?
Yeah, so it does get really complex in the air, and that's why sometimes even someone who's got, the best VOC tester and they show me the results, I'm like, that's just a mess, because the interactions that happen in the air, and there's ozone in the air and everything's reacting. So I get samples of things. Sometimes I even buy the pure chemical, but often I just need to get a sample of, like, let's say a product that I know the only ingredient, and plywood would also apply to this example. It's only wood and formaldehyde. Plywood would be a simpler example. This is the Rich Light countertops. I've ordered samples just of a pure chemical to sniff and then compare. I order samples of, so health product declarations are much more important than people always think. The safety data sheet hardly tells you anything. The
Right.
health product declaration, if it's a full disclosure, tells you everything that's in it. So I'll take a cork flooring that I know is only made with the polyurethane glue and start to isolate that polyurethane smell. And now I can see, do other brands of cork flooring have polyurethane, or have they mixed it with a little bit of phenol formaldehyde? So that's pretty simple. That's not too many. That's not like they've added 10 chemicals and I'm trying to, I don't know if I could figure out 10 different glues that are all combined, but 1 and 2, yes.
So wait, is your process like just you order a sample and then you sit there huffing it for like 10 minutes and then you see how you feel? Or how does it work? Like literally, what's your
It doesn't
testing
really
protocol?
matter how I feel, because those kinds of reactions can be really individual, but I want to know if I can pick up the odor.
Mm.
And then is that similar? So if I know something has formaldehyde, then I'll choose another, flooring or another product and see, does this have the formaldehyde in it?
I haven't seen this health product declaration.
Mhm.
I imagine not every manufacturer does it because
They don't all have it. No, it would be nice if they did. More transparency in this field is going to help a lot. So yeah, I mean, I go deep into the patents. I go deep into any product that's showing their full declaration, their full declare label of ingredients. The SDS sheet, I'll look at it, but yeah, it's really limited.
Let's drill down for a moment. I am talking to you from my tiny house on
Yeah.
wheels, the tiny lab, which I'm very happy with. We did not know some things when we built this, like EMF. I found out that the 2 highest electromagnetic frequency or field readings were where my daughter's head was when she was asleep as a baby, all night long, and then also where your head is when you sit on the toilet. So I'd love to have you kind of chime in about that, about like the difference between building a house that's like awesome and building one that is suitable for somebody with MCS. And also I'd love to hear your experience with tiny house, because you actually built a tiny house and you have a pretty amazing story about that.
Yeah, I was very, very sensitive at the time. I had to pick each material one by one with much less information out there on the web, one book on the topic, fewer products. Like, at least now we have way more products that are getting healthier. So your tiny house has Pure Bond plywood as the main walls. And it's one of those products that's formaldehyde free, and they haven't totally declared what the glue is. It's a soy-based glue, which probably means it's a polyurethane. I have dug into the patents. I can't say for sure, but we can guess that that's a polyurethane, and we could guess that it's given off MDI, which is an isocyanate. It was a type of isocyanate. So that's a very common VOC that people often know. They may know that they're reactive to it. They may know they don't want it. Your cork floorings also almost certainly, I don't remember which brand you went with, but they almost certainly were made with the polyurethane glue. Every cork flooring I've seen, that's the main glue, if not the only glue. And that's okay. Like, it goes down with time. Like, some of these products, I think we have to choose between, yes, okay, right in the beginning, it's not going to be perfect. But if you're healthy and if in a few months it's down to a reasonable level or maybe even gone, that's much better than using something that has persistent toxins like the plasticizers in vinyl flooring. So people often find for most people, vinyl plank is odorless. For me, it's not, but for most people it is. But those plasticizers are still there, and they're more persistent toxin, and they don't necessarily come to a completion and then just stop.
Do you find that ventilation is something that can solve for a lot of those things when you you just can't avoid having this or that chemical off-gassing, which in today's world, it's hard to fully control for all that stuff?
Yeah, air exchange would be the first thing to do before an air purifier, probably even cheaper than an air purifier, depending on what kind of system you have to put in, maybe more if it's whole house. But if you're in a very mild climate with low humidity, I mean, opening the windows is your ventilation. So that is the first thing. Dilution is the most effective thing you can do before you start getting into, I do help people walk through, like, should we seal this? Because we can seal in some VOCs either permanently or in some just kind of temporarily so that we can get through. And then there's, you know, heating it up heating it up a bit while airing it out. You don't want to go too far with that because, as we know, heat and looking at the humidity and the heat, we don't want your wood floors to split or cup.
Being somebody who doesn't have MCS and lives in a tiny house on wheels, I often hear people say, I have MCS or environmental sensitivity, and I want to build a tiny house. And I'm always like, no, please don't, because everything in a tiny house is closer to your face than in a normal house. And it's like, you have all the same stuff in here. So what's your take on the whole thing? And also, if you would share anything about your story that you're interested to share.
So there are a few builders building for MCS with tiny houses, and they somewhat coincidentally and somewhat not coincidentally are not good at building science. They're not building for mold prevention. They're not building for moisture prevention. All the ones that I've seen, I can't, say that I've seen every single builder. So this is a challenge. I do have a whole video about why I would not choose a builder who's marketing themselves as MCS or green builder, in the sense of green as in healthy, not green as in energy savings. If you're building a tiny house for MCS, you do have to get more and more detailed down to like the absolute. You can't just be like, okay, well, we're just gonna have to wait that out. It's a big room. Or you're gonna be sleeping in the bedroom away from that, and so we're gonna have time to air things out.
So let's talk for a second about the big house that we're building. And we've put a ton of videos out about the steps that we're taking to kind of do all of the building sciencey stuff, that does deal with chemistry and microbiology as well as physics. But I'm not building it for MCS. I'm building it for my family who do not have environmental sensitivity yet. I'm going to cross my fingers that that's always the case, because it sounds like a pretty nasty thing to have to deal with. How would I have to build it even more strictly to make it meet what somebody who has environmental sensitivity would be able to be happy with?
Well, what are some of the main material choices in your house? Let's see if we would have to bring those up to something.
Great. So the sheathing is OSB, as is the subfloor is OSB.
Avantec?
The flooring is Avantec. The walls are Georgia Pacific force field. It's an all-in-one weather-resistant barrier.
Yeah, so Avantec subfloor, that would be an example of one that I believe their warranty requires the use of their polyurethane subfloor glue, which is quite strong for people who are very sensitive. So that's where you have to somewhat understand, a little more than just the material itself, the installation of the material, because plywood would be easier for people with chemical sensitivities a little bit.
Okay, so 3/4 inch plywood would be the first thing you do. And I did use that in the tiny lab. It was the 3/4 inch ply instead of OSB. So that's one interesting thing. Thank you. We have rock wool insulation in the walls.
That's my top pick for insulation. I do have to do a little bit of convincing because there is a little bit of formaldehyde, and formaldehyde became one of these things where we went too far. Formaldehyde became one of these things that now everyone knows. There's lots of education. That's really good. But we went too far. And so we've replaced formaldehyde with things that are maybe just as bad, maybe worse, because the amount of formaldehyde in plywood and rock wool is so low and off gases so quickly. And of course, you can get a sample yourself. And if you're extremely sensitive, go with your own body over what anybody says, if you can still smell or react to that. There's also a little bit of like mineral oil and other things in there, but very small. So that I would definitely choose that over an insulation that has, especially an unknown binder. They did this because people didn't want formaldehyde. They didn't do this because the company thought it would be better. they
Or the
did
engineers were like, it would make this this product
no,
even easier to install. Yeah, right.
no, or even healthier. It was marketing of just gearing towards consumers, and that can be good, obviously. But they went toward these bio binders, and they may have added biocides. We're not really clear with those bio binders and what they even are. So, and they're probably not that bad, but I would rather go with something that I know what it is and know that it's going to off-gas quickly and know that it's going to perform well.
Although I really wanted to try and find a magnesium oxide panel manufacturer that we could work with, I found again and again that the companies are actually not very mature companies, like meaning that they don't return your calls, they don't have very solid websites. There was a lot of talk, but not a lot of actual data that I got in my hands. And so we're just going to do drywall.
Yeah.
That's Green Guard Gold certified, but like, why, what's up with that?
I think that's where we can get a little bit sidetracked again. It's like, there's nothing wrong with drywall. It's zero VOC. There's no formaldehyde. There's been some cases where they've had bad batches that had sulfur. That's not the norm. I have a very detailed post on drywall, and that's what my posts really dig into every detail. If you really want to know everything about everything that's possible to know, then that's what I am interested in. But if you want the simple answer, normal drywall is zero VOC. There's not that many additives in it. There's not any of high concern.
Obviously, number one, I'm going to link to that drywall
Yeah, sure.
article in case anybody's interested in the description of this video. And so in parting, the certifications that you think are useful at this point.
I'd say none of them are all that great, because Green Guard Gold is the best one. If you're healthy or even, mild to moderately sensitive, this is a helpful certification.
Or a child, for example, who's developing and having growing lungs and stuff like that.
There's still some things missing from it, which I'm going to get to. So Green Guard Gold, only looking at VOCs, not flame retardants, not phthalates, not other plasticizers, not metals. It's missing so many things that we need to have something that includes those. They used to have a Green Guard Gold children in schools and included plasticizers. I don't know why they got rid of it. It seemed like we're going in the wrong direction. But vinyl plank is becoming very popular for houses and apartments. Very, very popular. It's waterproof. It's pretty inexpensive. It looks like wood, more or less. That flooring right now I would say it's kind of sneaking through all the cracks, because it's got the plasticizers. If it's phthalate free, it's got another plasticizer, as Arlene Bloom talks about in her 6classes.org, which you've interviewed her. Those are really good categories to look at when people are like overwhelmed with like, what do I avoid? You need to go towards the biggest concerns. And it's not my favorite flooring. It's not the worst in the world. You don't have to panic if you have it in your house, but there's no the answer to that question, there's no certification that's really taking everything into consideration. And many of them are, that's the best one, Green Guard Gold. Many of them are far worse than that. Floor Score doesn't even have an upper limit of total VOCs. It's basically telling you the product is legal to sell in California. Not illegal. This product is not illegal. So, great.
What about Carb2 Compliant? Is that a useful?
It was a really helpful law, and Europe has the same, and most of Asia has the same limit on formaldehyde, and this helped change the industry. Now we almost only see phenyl formaldehyde in products, which off-gases so much faster. It's not urea formaldehyde, which used to last, I think they used to say 7 years or so in some of these manufactured wood. So this is like, plywood is, they say it's already off gas by the time it gets to you. I can still pick up the formaldehyde for a little bit longer, but it's not that long. Like that movement towards phenyl formaldehyde in kitchen cabinets, you can tell. Anyone that's sensitive or can smell formaldehyde has known that kitchen cabinets are way better now. So that helped like on a global scale, but it's also just telling you, like as a consumer now, that this is just legal in California.
It's just for formaldehyde.
Yes.
Okay.
And they have different levels allowed for different products. So MDF is still higher than plywood. So if it's still better to get plywood-based cabinets than MDF-based cabinets, it's still better to get real wood molding than MDF mold baseboards or
right.
Molding.
Although if you visit a site where they're selling MDF, they're going to say it's better because of blah 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 blah, and the cost is. So ultimately, marketing is our enemy right now, because it's all,
Yeah.
masquerading as science when in fact it's probably pseudoscience, or people just say whatever they want. So thank you very much for doing the work that you do outside of a laboratory without anybody making you do it.
Yeah.
And thank you for teaching us and me today about this stuff, because I'm going to take this and hopefully be able to do my work better for my clients as well. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Corinne.
You're welcome. It's fun.